understand that flow is not mystical. It's mechanical. It is something that can be triggered, but most people, they wait on motivation, they wait on inspiration, and it never comes and they never get anything done. The reality of the situation is that you simply need a simple system, and through that system, you're going to be able to trigger flow on command. But before we get into that, who the heck am I? Well, I'm someone who stopped wasted hours on my phone and started to focus. And once I was able to lock in on that focus, a lot of things began to change me. For starters, I was able to go from 200 to over 30,000 followers on Instagram in 30 days. I was able to double my subscribers in the past 30 days. I went from like 3,000 to 7,000. Added $2,000 to my revenue, and now have over a collective following of 100,000 followers. And all of this was because I stopped wasting so much time on anime, on video games, and all this stuff that didn't matter, and started putting that time into what genuinely moved me forward, and the results show for themselves, right? And one of the key components of the system that I created was flow, which is exactly what I'm going to be talking about in this video. So understand that, again, flow is not something that you just fall into, right? You don't just fall into flow. It's something that can be triggered. But then the question remains, how can you trigger, right? How is it triggerable? Well, first got to break down this misconception. Again, it's not something magical. It's not something you walk into. People think of flow state as like, oh my goodness, I don't even know what that is. You know, I've heard whispers here and whispers there. I've never experienced it for myself, right? But again, because the reason it's so difficult to fall into flow is because most people cannot differentiate between work and distraction. And I'll give an example, right? You might think, okay, you know, I'm going to get some work done, right? You sit down, but then like immediately before that, you were scrolling on your phone, you were playing video games, you were watching anime, right? Then you sit down and work, you're like, this is kind of boring, you know, I'm getting distracted. You just pick up your phone again, right? There's no line between the two. You can't, they always blend in together. Whenever you feel like working, you end up getting distracted and you start scrolling, right? When you're distracted and scrolling, well, you don't feel like working anyway, right? Again, it's because these two are two very closely related. For most people, it's like they can't break them apart. You can't sit down and work without having your attention pulled this way or your focus pulled that way, and you're never able to get anything done because of it, right? But understand that if you want to achieve flow, you're going to need to obtain predictability and structure. It needs to become something that your brain can predict with an accurate measure. Okay, when I sit down, I'm going to get this done. It's going to be very structured. And then your brain is going to enter a state of status quo. It's going to enter a state of naturalness. And that's the state that you need to be in if you want to achieve the flow state and actually get a significant amount of work done, right? This creates mental reliability. Your brain, again, it gets in that process. Okay, at this time, I sit down, I get the work done. I'm efficient. A lot of things get accomplished, right? And if you do that at the same time every single day, now it's not something you have to think about. It's not something you have to force yourself into. It's just your natural state of being. Now you're naturally able to enter into that flow state, right? Because once you create the door, right? Once you're able to create a door, your brain is naturally going to walk through that and you're going to be able to get into a flow state, right? But in order for that to work, you need to create that door, and that door needs to be open. And this door I'm referring to is ultimately the system. It's a very simple system that I like to call the flow trigger protocol, right? This is the exact system that I use to get the results up here, right? And the exact system that I teach in my group, the Focus OS, first link in the description if you're interested. Now, the first step in that system is that you need to make the transition into work sacred. Right? Again, you can't just hop straight to work just after you got it scrolling. Oh yeah, haha, funny reel, funny meme, right? For 3 hours and then expect yourself to sit down and work. Because again, it's not going to work. But most people do that exact very thing, right? And then when they sit down, it's like you can't focus because your dopamine has been spiked to an extremely unnatural level. Now you literally just, you can't focus, right? Because now you're trying to bring your dopamine down here to where the focus work is, and your brain doesn't want to do that anymore because the status quo, like the natural level, has been raised up here. And when you try and come down here, it feels uncomfortable. Oh my goodness, I can't do it. I can't sit down. This is, you know, it's making me bored. This is making me anxious. I'm not doing this anymore. And you pick up your phone and you start scrolling and, you know, say goodbye to the next 3 hours. If you work like that, if you carry out your life like that, understand that you are not going to achieve anything. Right, which means something has to change about that system. Something is incorrect, right? But rather than that, you know, I figured out for myself that that wasn't working. So I had to create a ritual that separated dopamine and discipline. The ritual that separated, okay, scrolling from work, video games, from focus, right? It allowed me to fully differentiate, fully pull apart the two. That way, when I did sit down and actually get some work done, whether that was creating content, doing some work on my business, whatever the case was, I was actually able to sit down and get it done. And that all started with a physical ink, right? I had to pull myself out of that, that dopamine loop, right? That natural that just sucks you into it. You get trapped and you're like, oh my goodness. You look up from your phone, 5, 6, 7 hours have gone by. You don't even know where the time went, right? You need to regain your presence. You need to do something physical in order to get out of that frame, right? Get out of that mental state, that way of thinking, right? Which is very simple. There's 3 things you have to do. First, you want to stand up, right? Literally just stand up, get out of your chair, get out of your bed, stand up, and you want to remove all the noise. That means no phone, no notifications, no Netflix, no Instagram, right? Anything that has a potential to pull you away from your focus. Even the random tabs that you have open on your computer right now, close those as well, right? Stand up, remove all the distractions, and then you want to write down one sentence. Me, I like to go on the whiteboard. You guys can't see it, but it's behind the camera. Just get up, go into the whiteboard, and then on that whiteboard, I will write, what exactly I'm going to focus on within this block, right? So whether it be, okay, I'm going to create content, or okay, I'm going to write some scripts, okay, I'm going to do some work on my business, or I'm going to do some outreach, right? Whatever the case is, whatever I plan to do within that block, I write it down, and now my brain is primed. Like, I've made it physical, I've made it concrete, rather than just the thought, okay, I think I'm going to do this. Oh, but actually that thing's open, I need to respond to that. Oh my goodness, I got to look at this email. Oh my goodness, I didn't do that, right? Rather than letting the loop stay open, right? I write something down, it's completely closed, there's no choice, there's no options, right? There's nothing for me to procrastinate on. I know exactly what I'm going to do within that block, which allows me to enter the flow state a lot easier because there's nothing pulling my attention away, right? Because that sentence, it's a commitment, right? Because when you do not commit, that means you're leaving the door open for this, that, and the third to come and distract you, right? Okay, actually, I wanted to sit down and do focus work, but, I actually have to go help out with this, so I got to go respond to that, or I got to check this notification, or I have to respond to this message, right? There's too many options going around, too many concepts going around in your head. But when you commit, you're removing all of them. It's just you and the main task at hand, right? And what this ends up doing is this tells my brain that this is a war, not a negotiation. Just understand, right? The battle between, distraction and deep work, right? It's not some funny little game. It's a war that you have to fight every single day. And the more you lose that war, the further and further you get away from your goals, right? So, you have to go into this with the mindset of winning. You have to be prepared to make that commitment, right? To do what needs to be done, to put in the hard work, put in the effort so that you can actually make progress toward achieving your goals, right? And the next step is that you need to master repetition over motivation. Because again, most people like to wait on motivation. Oh, I'm just going to wait. Oh, I finally feel like working today. Let's go. Oh yeah, pedal to the metal. I'm going to get so much done. Then you're burnt out and you're not doing anything for the next week. Rather than that, you need to get into a mindset of repetition. You don't have to be motivated. You don't have to be happy. It doesn't really matter. You simply need to get the work done. You need to get into that framework. You need to make getting the work done so easy that it would be harder for you not to do it. Right? Meaning you have to get your mind into that state of status quo. You need to make deep work your new normal. The way you start doing that is doing it at the same time, in the same place, and the same task, right? So, you wake up first thing in the morning, right? Get that first deep work session in, 90 minutes, 2 hours, right? Whatever works better for your type of focus, right? You need to sit down and at the same time, same place, and do the same kind of work, right? Because then that's how you're getting into that state of naturalness, right? That's how you're getting into that state of flow, right? Because once you are in that state, your brain doesn't have to think about, okay, do this at this time, right? It's like, it's not something you have to think about. It becomes your default mode. You're able to just sit down, get the work done, and then move on to the next thing, right? And again, when you're able to get into that state of naturalness, that's where flow lies. Flow lies in not thinking, right? It's kind of like when you're scrolling, right? You get into your phone, you start scrolling, you look around like, oh my goodness, where'd all the time go, right? That's flow, but in a bad way. But now we're trying to trigger that with focus work. We're trying to trigger that with deep work, right? You don't think about the next reel you're going to. Your brain, your finger just naturally scrolls to the next one, right? It's kind of like that, but instead of, pulling away from your focus, instead of bringing you further and further away from your goals, it's actually bringing you closer because you're doing something that moves that lever and that brings you progress, right? This is what we're trying to trigger here. So ultimately you need to get into that state of repeating, right? Because through that repetition, through that cycle, it's connecting these neural pathways within your brain, right? Because now it's creating that chain, right? So when you sit down to work, it starts that natural chain, that natural domino effect of you actually getting the work done and you making genuine progress. Because this predictability, it's training your nervous system to cooperate. Again, all that, it's creating that neural pathway, right? Imagine these is your neurons, where this is, success, or deep worker, right? Getting the task done, right? And this is the start, right, or the trigger. As you keep repeating that process, right, at start, neural pathway is going to look something like this, right? But as you keep carrying out this process of repetition, right, that pathway is going to start getting stronger and stronger. And see, it's going from like this tiny little line, now it's a little bit thicker. The pathway is strengthened, right? And again, you're going to keep repeating that process. You keep doing it over and over again. Now that pathway is even more solidified because you repeated that process. You've gone through the frameworks. You've gone through the exact step-by-step so many times that now, right, the second you get that trigger, your brain already knows, okay, I'm doing this next and that and that and that and that and that. Okay, good, I finished the session, right? This is the power of repetition. It becomes natural, right? It's kind of like, you don't have to think about walking anymore. You've walked so many times that you don't have to think, okay, I'm going to move my left foot, I'm going to move my right foot, now I'm going to move my left. No, it's not how you do that, right? Because you walked so many times. It's a process that you repeated so many times. You don't think about it. You just naturally take that next step, right? This is what you want to achieve, but through your deep work. Now let's make this pin smaller. Too small. Yes. Right. And then eventually you want to eliminate your feeling, right? No feeling check, right? You just need to get the reps in. Because obviously as you're going through this, you're going to feel a little bit, and I'm going to feel anxious. It's not going to be easy, right? Focus work is not easy, but it's not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be, you're supposed to achieve your goals through this, right? If you want to get where you want to be in life, obviously it's not going to be an easy process. But through that difficulty, you're going to grow, you're going to get better, you're going to improve. And things are going to end up better for you overall, right? So don't have a feeling check, I'm feeling a little bit tired. Let me just stop the deep work here. I'm feeling a little bit low energy. I'm just not going to do it anymore. I'm feeling a little bit bored. I'm just not going to continue, because the more you stop your deep work, right, the harder it's going to be to build that chain. The more you're going to keep falling into distractions, picking up your phone, wasting time. Because eventually you're going to stop feeling that amount of resistance. You're going to stop resistance, and you're going to start dropping into the work, right? You're going to start flowing into it. You're going to start feeling a lot more natural when it comes to carrying out this deep work, this focus work, right? It's not going to be something you have to second guess or force yourself into, right? You just naturally flow your way into it, right? You've adapted to flow state. The flow state becomes your new normal. The flow state becomes you. This is how deep work becomes the default, right? It's no longer, again, I've said it multiple times. I'm going to say it again, right? It's not something you have to think about. It's something you naturally fall into. It's something that naturally falls into place. And once your work gets to that point, there's nothing that you won't be able to accomplish. And the third step is that you need a closed loop focus system, right? Because again, in order for flow to be achieved, in order for flow to grow, in order for flow to be improved, where you're going to need feedback, or it's simply going to be incomplete and you're not going to accomplish anything with it. So essentially after every session, every deep work session you carry out, have a timestamp and then write 2-line summary. Okay, what did I accomplish during this session? How efficient was I during this session, right? It's very simple. It doesn't have to be something complicated or crazy or complex. You don't got to go into a deep journal, right? Simply write 2 sentences. Okay, what did I accomplish? How could I have improved? What could I have done better? Right? And through that, it's that process of iteration, because I believe I talked about this a little bit in a previous video, right? But if you're not asking these questions, then you're not growing. And yes, you might start out, make a little bit of progress. Eventually you're going to plateau, and that plateau is not going to improve. It's not going to grow. It's not going to go anywhere until you start asking yourself the questions. Okay, what did I do wrong? How could I have improved, right? And then you're going to get on that cycle of constantly going upward, and it's not going to stop, because you're constantly improving, constantly iterating on your current process. So again, there's no emotion needed for this process. You don't need to deep journal. This is just closing the loop, right? You did the focus work. Okay, what did I do? How could it be improved? Right now, you close that loop, right? It's not like, oh, I meant to, finish that extra sentence for my essay. Oh, I meant to change that thing. I meant to write that for the script, right? There's no closed, rather, it's no open loop, right? It's not something your brain is going to keep coming back to. Because you did that close, you wrote down what you accomplished. Now that portion is finished. It's not going to cause any mental fog, mental fatigue later down the line because you got it out of the way. You made it concrete. You wrote down what happened. Then you wrote down how it can be improved. And now when you go into the next deep work block, you're not going to be distracted about what happened in that previous block. You can simply go into the next one. Very frictionless, very easy. And you're going to be able to get a lot done. And ultimately, this trains your brain to expect a reward after focused, right? Because that reward is that level of closure. It's that sense of accomplishment that, okay, I told myself I was going to sit down and get this thing done. I sat down, I got the thing done, right? And I even was able to reflect on it and grow throughout that process as well, right? Now your brain is able to, strengthen that chain even more because you had that reward at the end. Right now, it's not just a chain, but now it's a loop. I'm not going to make it thicker, but essentially, when it goes from being that change, so now it's a constant feedback loop of you improving, and more importantly, you being able to enter that flow state, right? And this is ultimately something that's very neurologically satisfying, right? It's kind of like scrolling, but for deep work, right? Now, instead of scrolling on your phone, instead of like, oh, dopamine, haha, funny Netflix, right? Now you get that feeling from getting genuine work done. You get that feeling from applying the effort, putting in the pain, and seeing genuine results from it, not the fake results that kind of social media and all this mindless dopamine tricks you into thinking you're getting. But this is real, genuine result, real, genuine quality, something that genuinely brings you closer to the you that you're trying to become, to the goals that you are trying to achieve. So, to quickly summarize, right, the flow trigger protocol is first you need a transition ritual. So again, that's one sentence, zero distractions, right? Don't make this complicated. The more complex things get, the harder they are to do. The less you want to do them, the less you're going to get done, right? Next is you need a fixed deep work slot. So same time, same place, same task. Again, let's not overcomplicate things here. Third is that you need a closure ritual, right? Timestamp, 2-line summary. What did I get done? What can I do better? And last, you need to repeat, because soon that trigger is going to build, and then this is going to become an automatic habit. You won't have to think about it. You won't have to force yourself into it. You will simply naturally do it. And that is how you enter a true flow state. And if you're interested in being able to trigger this on command and actually free up those hours that you're spending on your phone, wasting time, so that you can actually focus on what truly matters and achieve your goals, join the Focus OS, first link in the description. It has every tool, every system, every framework that I used myself in order to achieve my goals, plus some extra bonuses as well. Other than that, click this video here if you want to learn something new. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.